Oh, hello. Okay, you guys, so this is Tinkerbell. And if you see us getting distracted today, she has just been, we call her Tink the Terror when she's not being a precious angel. So she's going to join us here and there. You might not see her, but she'll bump the camera, I'm sure.
She likes the three legs. She likes those 3 legs down there. Well, good morning. I'm Pastor Adcock. This is Miss Darby Bell Adcock. How you doing this morning, Miss Darby?
I'm wonderful. Good morning, everyone.
Missed you at church yesterday.
Yes, I missed you guys very much.
We had a great day at Bible Baptist. How about your day? You were toward Granger area?
Yes, I guest led worship at a church called Influence Church, and they spell it with an N.
No I.
No I, just
There's no I in influence.
No, not in this one. But it was really lovely, and some of the worship leaders were sick, and we've kind of been in contact with that church here a little bit. So it was just really nice to be able to go and help friends, which is super important. Help the Big C Church.
It's a season of sharing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But you guys had some baptisms yesterday, big baptisms.
Yeah, we did. We baptized my daughter Ariana, and then we had a youth person get baptized.
Very cool.
Took 2 of us to do him yesterday.
Oh yeah,
not because of size or anything, but just based upon the fact that
the excitement.
He was, I think, influenced by a couple people in our youth group, and so Malachi and Ryan Walters was able to baptize him together, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
That's cool.
Kind of the idea of sharing again, just
yeah.
I think sometimes we get so serious in church that we forget that baptism's really a thing of celebration.
Yeah.
It's somebody, and I thought Logan did a good job in his video where he said, I've already asked Jesus in my heart. I just want everybody to know it. And that's why I'm getting baptized. And I thought, that's what this is about.
Yep.
So
I thought you were going somewhere different with that, where like he's been influenced by other people. I'm like, what did he like do a joke or did he do a prank or I have seen some of the heart, like when I don't know if you guys have ever seen baptisms where it's a little just you don't want to drop them, and it's a big responsibility to make it go smooth and stuff. But I find that the hardest ones when people have not done enough trust falls. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, I would be scared of like, are you gonna catch me?
Well, it's funny because I think Ryan, if I'm looking at Logan, and I was holding the mic, so when Malachi was talking, and so Malachi's talking, and Ryan's on this side, Malachi's on this side, and they kind of got an arm in the back, and they're going to take him down, and Logan kind of stopped, and he said, are you going to lift me up? And Malachi's, no, we're going to dunk you, and we're going to put you backwards. So that's what they did. It worked well, and we had 2 baptisms yesterday, which is always exciting at Christmas time. It's exciting anytime. Our church is a little different. I shouldn't say different, but there's a lot of churches that they choose a day. Hey, everybody's gonna get baptized on this Sunday, or this at this time we're gonna go to this lake, or whatever they can do. And I think that's cool too. But I like the idea too, when people get saved and say, I'm ready to be baptized, that we get it done.
Yeah. And then those of you who don't know, I know you most of you know, but Malachi is the youth director, and then Ryan is one of the youth helpers, volunteers. Yeah. He's been doing it for years. So just for those of you hearing that name, he is one of our small group leaders, and he's just been really influential in a lot of these kids' lives.
Yeah, and it's Ryan just has a great heart. He loves to serve. I think and I think if he was here, he'd agree with this. I think Ryan wants to make sure that every activity is as successful as possible.
Oh yeah.
And so he'll do whatever it takes to make sure that happens.
And if you guys are ever seen the youth group at the Knox high school games or any sort of sports things, it's Ryan that put it together. So maybe we should have him on the podcast one of these times.
Yeah.
He's got a beautiful head of hair.
Yeah. It's
you hesitated.
Yeah.
You're jealous. It's okay.
No, I'm not jealous. I just I like groomed hair. I like short hair.
I understand.
Always have.
My he used to have the long hair, and I don't think I've ever seen Ryan put it in a man bun. We all know what a man bun is, but
yeah. Let's hope not.
I know, but before we get too off track here, let's talk about what you talked about yesterday.
Well, and I told the church this, and I'm not sure if I said it in the second service or not, but is a message I kind of struggled to put together. I was kind of heading one direction. I just wanted to speak about the wise men. But then I kept coming back to Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth forth his handiwork. Day and day utter speech, and night showeth his knowledge. And I just thought, man, what is God trying to say here? And then I started thinking about all the times that God had revealed himself, but remained untouchable. Mm. So you have Mount Sinai experience and the smoke and the fire that came on the mountain. The people were so scared. They said, Moses, you go speak to God, then you come tell us what God said. You have the Moses being hid in the cleft of the rock so God could pass by, and Moses saw the backside of God. You have God filling the temple when Solomon finished the tabernacle, and it was so powerful, and the Shekinah glory of God filled it so much that the people couldn't even enter it. And then we have Jesus, and it just kind of hit me that if you kind of go with Joseph and Mary, who are the kind of the beginning components to this in the manger or in the stable area, and we're not sure if it's a stable or a cave, or I know there's different interpretations there, but needless to say, Joseph and Mary were the first ones to see the face of God in the essence of Jesus in human flesh. Mm-hmm. Possibly, and I think it was Joseph who had to help Mary have the child. There was no midwife. There were no sisters around, no aunts or anything that we know of. It was just Mary and Joseph. And so Joseph is the doctor and the nurse, and he has to catch the baby.
You have to wonder, too. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that have studied this and would know, but, at that time, that culture, I know you have midwives and stuff, but I wonder how much men were versed in, like, maybe would they have been? I wonder, like, if Joseph had sisters or just whatever the culture was, did he know what he was doing, or was it a culture thing that, like, the men were not?
I would have to. We know Joseph was a carpenter, and I think we brought this up in every episode. But when we were in Israel, we'll
bring it up a lot.
Yeah,
we really will.
But we found out carpentry was not necessarily wood. Mm-hmm. It was stonework. Mm-hmm. And that was considered carpentry, which today we would call masonry in our culture. But in Joseph's...
Which is also what Jesus did.
Yes. So it's very possible a lot of the mosaics that people see in the Middle East, that's the work of, we would say that's a mosaic work, that's a masonry work. Well, in their day, they would say that was carpentry work. Mm-hmm. So it's very possible that Joseph was in masonry type stonework. He could have done some wood, but there's not a lot of wood there.
Yeah.
And so that was, that kind of caught my eyes. Like, there's a lot more rocks here than there is wood. But I share that because also it was an agricultural. So having lambs, goats having babies. If you talk to ranchers today that have cattle, they have different tools like come-alongs that help heifers when they're birthing, and maybe a calf needs helped out, and they put a chain around the leg, and they come along, and just brutal, yes, but to some extent, and I hope this doesn't come across impolite or rude, but to some extent, a child or an animal being born comes from the womb.
Yeah. So
much of the work is done by the woman or the female, and Joseph is there, and I try to present it as like Joseph's like, Mary, you got to push.
Yeah.
Mary, I can feel the crown of the head. Mary, and then I just kind of paused there, and it really hit me that there was this moment, and I remember from my own experience as a father watching my children be born, there's a moment where the doctor has the head, the body's still in the womb of the mother, but the head is out. And he's taking a suction cup and he's suctioning all the mucus out of the mouth and the nose so the baby can begin to breathe. And they want the baby to scream pretty soon to kind of get the stuff out of the lungs. But I just imagine Joseph with his finger to the best of his ability kind of wiping off on his robe or his clothing, sticking his finger in there and getting the mucus out, because he knows from possibly helping on the farm agriculturally that there could be mucus in the nasal lodge of the mouth. And just thinking there for a moment, just for a second, that I'm holding the head of God. I'm holding the head of the Son of God. Mm-hmm. I'm putting my finger in the mouth of God. I'm getting the mucus out. And, people have this idea that, I think sometimes people have the idea that Jesus never had a dirty diaper.
Yeah.
Or Jesus never fell down and scuffed his knees. He was human.
Yeah.
He was as much human. He was all, it's hard for us to understand. He's all human. He's all God.
Yeah.
But being all human, we know that sometimes we trip, sometimes we fall. You remember a professor in college said that Jesus cute, oohed, and he kind of slobbered. He broke his teeth, he had to get his teeth broke in. And
by falling, maybe,
Well, not. I mean, his teeth had to come in.
Oh,
The
gotcha.
pain of. We always call it breaking teeth, but the idea of just your teeth coming in. But yeah, and just Joseph pausing there for a moment, holding the head of Jesus, and he kind of maneuvered the shoulders, and the baby comes out, and he's holding God. He's holding God who spoke this world into existence, and God was so humble to come in such a fragile, vulnerable way as an infant.
Yeah.
And that just kind of captured me. And then I went from there with Mary holding him, nursing, wrapping him in swaddling clothes, the shepherds coming in. And I exaggerate a little bit with the shepherds maybe putting a hand in there. And I realize he's just an infant, but just, how babies grab your finger.
Yeah.
And I just kind of imagine that a little bit, that the shepherd reached down, touched, and Jesus grabbed his finger, and the shepherd thinking to himself, I've been touched by the hand of God. And then the wise men coming later down the road. And that was just kind of the gist of it, trying to present it in a way that maybe people haven't thought about before.
Yeah, and some of this stuff of, I know, you guys might be listening to this and, even like the birthing process, for some, some people it's a little uncomfortable for my, I get uncomfortable with that, but for the people it might be like, oh, TMI, but that kind of stuff, we say this, a lot of what we just did is somewhat called deductive reasoning. So we're just like, well, I wonder if this, a lot of this is just wondering. And again, we've talked about this in other podcasts too, of just asking those questions of, did Joseph know what he was doing? Could he have known? Deductive reasoning points to, like you said, agricultural, he would have known. But we point out these things because we said this last week as well, that this is, again, I joked last week of like, that's not the Christmas story I was told.
Yeah.
But if you really think about, again, these are not just stories, these aren't just characters in a story. These are real people that had some real things. And I think we jump on this podcast too to just kind of point to that as well, and to just kind of illuminate. And I even, this is a fun fact of the day too, two things. I hope you caught that Jesus was a carpenter, Joseph was a carpenter, but back then, like often like in the child stories that what are they called? The felt things that in Sunday school?
Yeah, if you wouldn't ask me, I could have told you. It was flannelgraph. Flannelgraph.
Flammograph? Flannel graph.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with flannel graph a ton. So, you
Sure.
see the flannel graph and you see like the wood and the carpenter that, that Jesus is working on and stuff, or carpentry and stuff. But really back then, like you said, that there might have been a little bit of wood, but it was so much of the rock that they were using or working with. So he was really a masonry.
Yeah.
Not masonry?
Masonry, yeah.
Masonry. Yeah, I lost my train of thought for a second, but that is something just that we don't think of, the story that we like, oh, he was working with wood. It was really stone.
Yeah.
And even
it's probably a mixture of both, but it's probably more
Yes.
stone than wood. I mean, you only can work with what you have available.
Yep. And then even the stable, he quickly said that as well. But when we point to Israel because we got to be there in the land that the Bible that we're reading about. So excuse us that we refer to that so much, but a lot of what we learned and the heart for this podcast has come from that. And when we learned about stables, could it have been an actual stable of wood? Maybe, but more likely a lot of the stables were in the side of a mountain because there's so much rock there.
Yeah.
And they've got these like cutouts in the mountain, and a ton of sheep would go under, and you're in a rock, like you're under a rock there.
Yeah, and not to get lost in this, but there is a specific place. Let me back up. The shepherds that were in Bethlehem were considered Passover shepherds. So their main task was to raise sheep that would be sold for the Passover sacrifice. So it's not coincidence that God went to these shepherds. God went to the exact shepherds that understood sacrifice. Mm-hmm. They understood what an animal was being born for, and they understood that this lamb was born to die. And I want to say Megal, the Tower of Megal, but I don't know if I have the right name. Mm. But there was a specific place where they would birth these lambs, and there was a very sterile. It was all stone. Mm. And so, in fact, the manger was stone, and they would wrap the lamb in swaddling clothes, and they would place them in a manger to protect the lamb from getting any blemishes, because in Passover you can't purchase a lamb with a blemish.
Yeah.
So the shepherds were very careful in this. And here's another thought I had about this. I've experienced my wife with her 3 births from beginning to end, and so
Good man.
yeah, watched it, cut the cord, give me the cigar, good to go, right? But I was always amazed how much work the doctor or the nurses did after the birth. And this has always kind of been a struggle of mine. Like, obviously, I don't know what we weren't given the size of Jesus. Well, he was 21 inches long and he weighed 10.5 pounds. They didn't do that like we do in our culture. God didn't feel fit to tell us that, but I've always this is a really outside thought. What if the shepherds who were used to birthing were there, and when they came, is it possible that they may have helped Joseph with the process of whatever takes place after the birth?
Yeah.
To help take care of Mary, help her heal.
Yeah.
Because, of the many women that I have been able to go to the hospital and be with her and her husband after the birth of a child, or even the birth of my own children, there is a certain there's a certain element of medicine that a woman needs to begin the healing process. But we don't ever really think about that.
Did she have to do it alone? Did she and Joseph have to, was there any help there until...
I presented that they had to do it alone.
Yeah.
A lot of times there'd be Jewish midwives. A lot of times there would be sisters or aunts or people in the community, but they're in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
There's no room in the inn.
Yeah.
They're likely within a city, a family, but family has said no to them because of the pregnancy.
Yeah.
So Joseph has to do this, and my thought's always been, and I've never really brought this up in a church service because I didn't want people to throw things at me. But I'm just like, less something, and people may say, well, God protected Mary, and she didn't have any problems, and that may be true.
Yeah.
But the Bible doesn't say that either. But just what if these shepherds who were so skilled at the birth of lambs knew exactly to at least tell Joseph, hey, you may need to do this.
Yeah.
This may need to happen.
Yep.
And because there's a process. You clean the baby, yes, but if you don't clean the womb of a mother, there could be infection that sets in. And obviously we're really kind of speculating here on some things that are not important in the big picture. But what we try to do is what we talked about before is how do we get the scriptures into our bones?
Yeah.
And if you don't ask the question, it doesn't matter how crazy the question may seem. This is a question I've asked, but I've never brought it up in a sermon.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference there. Like, I'm not going to bring up every question I have into a sermon because I don't want to create that kind of chaos.
Yeah.
But that question may lead me to something different, which, like, okay, for example, the wise men come in, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay, yes, people say, well, that helped Joseph and Mary survive. Yes, but there are also pictures of his burial. And so if gifts given to Jesus when he was a toddler, anywhere from 4 to 6 months old possibly, compared to the shepherds and what they were doing with Mary, why can't we connect the dots there?
Yeah.
And that's all I'm just trying to do. And that's what I love about these podcasts is that we can kind of come in and share some of these questions, and people can sit back and laugh with us, or they can sit back and say, I've never even considered that before. And that's fine, but I think if we're going to get the scriptures into our bones, we can't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, and we've said this from the very beginning of it. It's not the way that our Western culture has been conditioned to ask things. I wouldn't say it's so much like put your questions on the shelf. I really don't think so. I just think that people at the time, think of like the 90s, because I had this question going to Israel when I started to have pictures of the text, and I'm like, how did people teach this so wrong? But people, I really was gently corrected, because it's easy to point fingers. It's easy to be like, well, I can't believe that it's just easy to do that. And I was gently corrected by our teacher of like, the people before just really didn't have the picture beforehand. And I think the more that we, with our resources, people can take trips to Israel or even the Holy Lands or see the cultural context, study that. It's so important. and we said this before again, of the word is living and active, and I really think that the way that the world is opening up, we have more opportunities. That's a huge way of the way that there's many ways that the word is living and active in even more of a spiritual way of just, you can, how many of you guys know that you can come back to the same text that you've known and hidden in your heart for years and go through something and come back and something's brand new.
Yeah.
And that way it's true. And then I really do think the more that we can ask these questions of the text of what was the culture at that time, what was, where geographically, where was this located, that lends itself to culture, just that is a way that the word expands as well in our understanding. And just going back again of, I know it's scary, even like you said, of like, we get a little bit scared of like, oh, I have these questions and it's going to create chaos. And if yes, that feeling is there. And when you're of the heart of a teacher, totally. If you're teaching and, we don't run off with these questions to go, hey, I was thinking about this, to minds that are like, they need to learn things. And I don't think I need to explain further there, but, ask the questions. And I have been told this too, when I had some really big questions, that when I had started leading corporate worship, I knew I was going to have questions. I just didn't think that they were going to be that kind of like faith-shaking questions.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful mentor, Pastor Ian McClelland in River Valley, Rockford. He just said, God can handle your questions, and just, he really, they might seem chaotic to us, but one thing that we love to point to with these stories of the Bible, and we're on Christmas right now, is that these questions, just, he was so specific in everything that he did, and like the exact timing that Jesus came as a baby. He could have saved the world in an instant, but he chose the waiting game. He chose time. He chose to take people on a journey for the time of Jesus's tangible life on earth, and thousands of years after. And we point to, I know we're talking so much about Mary and Joseph and the birth, and was she in pain, was she not, but that lends itself to we all are on a specific journey with God. And I can't, just of Jesus's life, and when he goes into the 30s, like, you have to wonder of like, what happened in that stable that God was working on Mary's heart, and God was working on Joseph's heart, of these, like, was Joseph scared of, I don't know what I'm doing? Well, God's like, well, just trust me. Right. And we ask these questions of, God, what were you doing, and what was the point? And my last thought there too, of, the questions, they can come of, we can ask cultural stuff, we can ask that, were the shepherds there, were they not, what, but it's all of these things of, if we can point back, not just what does this mean for me, but if we were taught this too, of like, God, what does this mean about God? Like, what is God trying to do here? And if we can continue to shift our questions there, of however chaotic they might seem or left field, number one, God had a purpose. Number two, God was so just, purpose and intention. And our cat is just bugging us today. We're so sorry, guys. But number two, God can take your questions, and they might seem chaotic to you, but there is such purpose in him, and he will not be shaken by your questions at all.
No, and what if, and again, let's connect dots here just real quick, just fictitious dots maybe, but what if Joseph was uncomfortable, as you said, didn't have confidence in what to do? He did the delivery, but he didn't know what to do afterwards. God brings shepherds in that are familiar with birth, so they help Joseph. And now, again, this is not in the Bible. I get this. Don't comment on this. Well, this isn't in the scripture. We get that. We're kind of filling in between the blanks with some of the questions that we're having. But then we fast forward, we find the wise men come to the house. Mary and Jesus is there, but not Joseph. Is Joseph working? And then when imagine Joseph coming home from work that day, and Mary says, oh, by the way, we had visitors today, people from the east, wise men from the east, and they left gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and now much of their needs are provided for through these three gifts. But, we don't often, if we don't ask the question, we're not able to kind of connect dots. And I guess that's where where we're kind of leading to next steps is begin to ask questions. Don't be afraid of the question. be careful who you tell your people, who the questions you tell people to, because some people don't particularly
Like questions.
like questions, right?
And that's okay. We'll gently shepherd them along
Yes.
and say that it's okay.
Everybody's different, but you think about a kid. We said this last week in last week's podcast. Be followers of God as dear children, Ephesians 5:1. And kids ask all kinds of questions. Why? 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 And I think that's what God wants to do with the Word. If we're getting involved, why? 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 And then we just keep, and that's what the Jewish rabbis do. And this is why students enjoy specific rabbis, because they asked all these questions. And so when they're teaching, they're coming from all these different angles that, I never thought about that before. I never put that together before, but it makes sense because somebody was willing to ask the question.
Yeah. And as you guys are just maybe, Christmas is next week. And as you guys are preparing for this Christmas season, and you guys might open up the Christmas story, which is Luke 2. Where does it start?
Luke 2, verse 1, and Matthew 2, verse 1.
And, so if you guys are curious and you guys are starting to go through and you guys are kind of just preparing your hearts, and again, we ask these questions. And if you're like, I'm not even there yet, I don't even know I've never even felt God, I'm just so, or even you've just gone through a season that you're just like, I did feel God one season and I don't feel him. And just, our prayer this season is if you guys have never felt near to God before, that we would our prayer is to what we point to this Christmas story, that God came near to you 2,000 years ago in the form of a baby. And that's what this year, this celebration is about. And as you come to, celebrating this year with your family, we pray that you know that God is so near to you. And there's a testimony in the Bible of God coming near to you 2,000 years ago, and his name is Jesus Christ, and you read about him his whole life.
You should call him Jesus. You shall save people from their sins. He's Emmanuel. He's God with us. So, Darby, thank you for being back with us today.
Yeah, I missed you guys yesterday at Bible Baptist. I'm
Pastor Adcock with Miss Darby here, and we'll see you next week on Next Steps.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.